Not bad. Welcome to Coburg United Church. I'm Rev Ron Salinsky. This is a church that is trying to do social inclusion and bases itself, if you're interested in creation-centered spirituality, based on the basic concept that if you don't have a relationship with Mother Nature, you're not going to rush in to save her when she's dying. So we're trying to build that communion with the good earth. The world needs you to show up and to be brave. In these profound times, we have a chance to save the future. So thank you for being there. Our acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional cares of the land on which we meet tonight, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Some housekeeping matters. We have the children's room, where mums, dads, carers, and loves to my left, where Sally is. Put your hand up there, Sally. Nice. And the toilets are to my right, your left. We hope you'll have a democracy sausage. We've uttered the two most important words in civilization: free food. So please avail yourself. We are so glad that you're here. Yes, some general housekeeping very quickly. Some people may wish to stay out of any photograph or videos. If this is you, please come and speak to any of our volunteers. Will our volunteers please give a wave? Yeah, there they are. Have a look. Speak to them if you'd like to be out of videos or photographs. This forum is going to be live streamed to Facebook thanks to John Englehart. John is a legend. There he is. John and his two coaches are installments of the Coburg ecosystem. Thank you, John. Now to introduce Kelly O'Shaughnessy, CEO of the Australian Conservation Foundation. So glad that you're here tonight. Tonight's forum will be chaired by Kelly. We are delighted to have Kelly O'Shaughnessy, who is the CEO of the Australian Conservation Foundation. Kelly has worked in business, government, and now in the community sector, and believes strongly in the power of people to advocate for a better future. Please welcome Kelly.
Today, and thank you everyone for coming tonight and being part of democracy and caring for climate and nature, and hopefully having a deforestation-free democracy sausage. I repeat, no animals and forests were hurt to create those sausages out there. So thank you for coming to the Wills 2025 Federal Election Candidates Forum. We have some incredible people that are willing to be part of making our country better, and they are here to speak to you tonight. But before we get on to that, we just wanted to recognise that in our environmental movement and community movements, we're better together, and there's many people who've put on tonight, including the Climate Choir, which were pretty amazing. And I was a bit disappointed that I wasn't invited to all for the ukulele, but you know, there's always time for these things. Climate Action, Mary Beth, Nature United, Happy Going, Climate Action, ACS Community, North by Northwest, Doctors for the Environment Australia, and the wonderful Coburg United Church. So, elections are incredibly important moments for our democracy, for the people that we love, and for the places that we love. It's the time when parties and candidates create their policies and actions and what they're going to do in the next term of Parliament should they be elected. It's the time when you get to elect your representative for the seat of Wills, and it's when the people of Australia get to elect the next government and Parliament of Australia. And it's really important to recognise that the whole of the Parliament is very important, not just who forms government, particularly these days when the major parties are not dominating in the way that they used to. We come here tonight at a time when we know there is a climate and nature crisis threatening our lives, the people And we know that the people of Wills stand up for and want a safe climate, and they want to see nature protected. We know that climate change is fueling very dangerous weather. They are not natural events that we are seeing, they are unnatural events, and people in this area and across Australia are really struggling to deal with these unnatural disasters. And we also know that we want our kids to grow up in a beautiful world. You know, most of us, some stage in our life, got to see the Great Barrier Reef or hooked up into a big old gum tree. This is nature cattle coming out here because that's right. And seeing a koala sitting up there and being mesmerised. And it's a real threat that that's not going to be something our children are able to experience, unless we act, and luckily we are acting. And that's what we're here tonight. We need our next government and our next parliament to stand up for a safe climate and a healthy natural world. We need our politicians to do 4 things, which is for ACF articulated in our national agenda, which is available tonight. And they are stop bulldozing the bush and save nature. You just helped tonight because none of those sausages were created by bulldozing the bush. But beef is the largest bulldozer of habitat in Australia. And most farmers are doing the right thing, but there's a small proportion that is destroying koala habitat, greater koala habitat, and our habitat because it creates the world that we need. And we need to champion the rollout of renewables and cut climate pollution fast. We need to reject nuclear energy and ensure Australia's future is renewable, not radioactive. And we need to stop the climate wreckers because we can't afford to have any more no new coal and gas or expanded coal and gas. That's what we need, and so we're really thankful that the candidates are here tonight to tell us about their policies for climate and nature. And to be honest, it's a brave thing to run for Parliament and put yourself out there as well. Many of us aren't brave enough to do that, so great respect to you all for doing that. And so tonight with us, we have Sue Bolton from the Socialist Alliance. Samantha Ratnam from the Australian Greens. Owen Miller from the Fusion Party. And Margee Glover from the Legalize Cannabis Party. And do you know what? There are a couple of candidates that are not here. And there are a couple of seats up here that are empty on purpose because it's a shame that they decided that speaking about climate and nature in this seat to you tonight wasn't worth their time. Jeff Kinney from the Labor Party did not respond to the invitation. Peter Khalil from the Labor Party told us just yesterday or the day before that he's unable to attend due to a prior engagement. After asking for 5 weeks and being very flexible on the date for the incumbent MP. So it's very disappointing indeed. And particularly because Mr. Khalil has come to candidate forums in the past and has decided not to do so. He did send through a note about what they've done. I've edited it. Not exactly these words. He wanted to sell himself, he should have done. But I think this is truthful. By the way, mostly of what he wrote was. I'm going to put a couple of exceptions, so the bad things they've done weren't included. So in the last term of Labor, in government, they have legislated a target of net zero emissions by 2050. They've increased Australia's 2030 emissions reduction target to 43% from 26 to 28%. They build more clean energy, which is cheap, reliable, and renewable, and they to get the grid to 82% renewable energy by 2030, which is a big task. But the government have corrected the 10 years of lack of action that we had suffered previously. That has included 750,000 rooftop solar systems, 25% increase in renewables in our national energy grid, approved 70 renewable energy projects, which is enough to power 7 million homes, according to Peter Khalil. I did not do the math on that. Invested in battery storage, and have blocked some destructive coal mines, including Clive Palmer's Queensland coal mine that threatened the Great Barrier Reef. However, they have approved 21 new or expanded coal and gas mines and associated infrastructure since 2022. That was missed out, and I felt it was an important piece of information to know. On protecting nature, they have expanded marine parks, and Australia has actually got more marine environments protected than most other countries, invested $520 million to protect threatened species, tackle pests, invested in nature repair market, but failed, and I'm so devastated about this, failed to deliver their primary ask, which was reform of Australia's national nature protection laws. And those laws are allowing, enabling extinction to occur in Australia, and if you don't fix them, you cannot stop extinction, which the government promised to do and have failed to do that. So that was what Peter would say through here. I hope I did a fair enough job at what he would say. So, there's some rules. Everyone up here knows, but let's just explain the rules to you tonight. Each candidate will speak for 4 minutes about their policies for protecting nature and acting on climate. They've been asked to respond to a couple of questions in particular, but don't want to cramp their style. As a politician and person, what does acting on nature and climate crisis mean to you? And what are your top 3 priorities for addressing the climate and nature crisis that you will push for if you are elected? We've got some timers, and they'll be dinging, ding, ding, ding when there's 1 minute left of those 4 minutes, so 3 minutes. And after we've heard from the candidates, we will then have questions from you, and then candidates will finally have 1 minute each to sum up. We ask that it is a respectful evening. Democracy is an important moment, and we don't always agree with each other. There's a lot more that we agree on than we don't. Often we don't talk about those, but it's always important to be respectful. We share a lot of values, and one of those is respect for each other. And if you would like to ask a question, there's a slip on your chair with a QR code, and that'll go to a Slido link, which is one of these newfangled technical ways of asking questions. You can type a question in there, and you can also vote for questions, vote them up or vote them down in terms of what you think is important. And if you'd like to direct your question to a particular candidate, then please let us know. So, we're nearly there, but we just had, before we get into the candidates, sorry, it's a bit long, isn't it? We just had one wonderful speaker from one of the organisations that I actually personally adore and love at ACF, she's the Doctors for Environment Australia. It's an organisation of medical professionals that know that we need a healthy environment and safe climate to be well ourselves. So I'd like to introduce to the stage or downstairs, wherever you would like, Nikki, there you are, Nicki Burdett from Doctors for the Environment to talk about the intersection between health and sustainability. And Nikki's a legend, so I won't introduce you, I'll let you do the talk.
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much, Kelly, for the introduction. As she said, my name is Nikki. I'm an oncologist and I work with Doctors for the Environment Australia. And caring about health is a core part of my job as a doctor. I think that many of us in the room would agree that our health and the health of our loved ones are one of the most important things that we've got. And our health is impacted by a lot of different things. This includes our genes, our diet, our level of physical activity, but it's also linked to our environment. And although we get to make choices about some of those things, for example, when we eat certain foods, when we choose to smoke, how much exercise we get, often we don't have the power to control our environment. An example of how our environment affects our health is extreme heat and heat waves. Extreme heat is often referred to as the silent killer. It's rarely recorded on a death certificate, but data tells us that heat has killed more Australians than any other climate disaster. Heat waves cause strain on the body, which affects how our heart copes, it affects how our kidneys function and how our brain functions. As doctors, we see more heart attacks, strokes, dehydration, mental health presentations, premature birth and stillbirth in heat waves. There are more presentations to hospital and more people die. Just in the last few weeks, I had to arrange for one of my patients to come to hospital to get some intravenous fluids because her kidney function got worse on a string of hot days. Heat waves are especially dangerous for certain groups. This includes older people, people who already have chronic health conditions, those who have limited mobility and perhaps can't get themselves fluids or move to a cooler space as easy, people who can't afford insulated housing or air conditioning, people who don't have secure housing at all, and those who are reliant on public transport. And these individuals who are in the most danger from hotter temperatures don't get to choose when their health got put at risk, but they suffer the consequences whether they like it or not. Another big and under-recognised issue is air pollution. Air pollution causes asthma, emphysema and heart disease. It's the second biggest risk factor for lung cancer after smoking, but unlike smoking, you don't get to choose if you're exposed to air pollution. And of course there are broader problems caused by climate change like bushfires, droughts, floods and biodiversity loss that affect our health as a wider Australian community. The reality is that fossil fuels drive all of these changes and they're making us sick. Coal, oil and gas are the primary drivers of climate change. They cause more than 75% of all greenhouse gases. Scientists have shown that greenhouse gases from human activity are without a doubt causing global warming. The last 10 years were the 10 warmest years on record. There's no question that the health and the well-being of us and everyone we love is at risk here. We need to stop using fossil fuels and urgently move to renewable energy forms to keep our communities safe. Action that protects the planet protects our health as well. The good news is it's not too late to change the outcome if we do act quickly. And coming back to why we're here tonight, elections are so important because this is how we get to make a choice. To elect a government who will make decisions and laws that make sure that the environment around us is as safe as it can be. Tonight is a great opportunity to hear from the candidates for Wills and how they plan to safeguard our health and the environment. This election, I really encourage you to vote for a candidate who will put health first and protect the people that you love. Thank you.
Nature is like a pill, it helps us survive. We need to protect this planet like our life depends on it, because it does. So now we're on to the time when we get to hear from very important people here tonight. Reminder, 4 minutes each. Ding dong bell, we're at 3 minutes when you have 1 minute left. And we've got this very highly encrypted, coded way of the order, which is alphabetical order to start with. So we're first going to hear from Sue Bolton, then Margee Glover, Owen Miller, and then Samantha Ratnam. So, hand over.
Thanks very much. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri Wurrung, whose land was stolen and never ceded, and who are victims of the most horrific genocide, similar to what we're seeing in Gaza today. And the first point I wanted to make, which doesn't often get discussed in climate and environment forums, is that in 2023, global military expenditure was $2.43 trillion. Think about what you could do to take action on climate change with that amount of money. Think about how much in the way of global greenhouse gas emissions are being emitted by the militaries around the world. So since the Kyoto Protocol was adopted, in that negotiation over the Kyoto Protocol, nations didn't have to report emissions from their militaries. That was something which the US won as part of that agreement. So, it's a voluntary thing. If nations want to report them, they do. But basically it means that it's totally hidden. One estimate is that the world's militaries could account for around 5.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. But that is probably a wild underestimation because really we don't know. We're seeing the highest numbers of wars and genocide since the Second World War today. And it's estimated that in the first 60 days of the genocide in Gaza, spewed more than 281,000 metric tonnes of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And there is a lot of reporting about the Iraq War in the at the beginning of the 2000s, about the incredible destructiveness of that war environmentally, where oil wells burned for months or years. So not only have we got the emissions from military and military expenditure that could go towards taking climate action, in Australia, the AUKUS agreement with the US and UK will take up a huge amount of resources, and we've already just paid Donald Trump $800 million for the pleasure of AUKUS, but it's meant to cost at least $368 billion, and probably way more than that. So this is, anyway, so this is a major threat to the climate. So I'll just rattle through some other things, sorry. It was mentioned disasters, floods, storms and fires. It's unaffordable for people to deal with all of these issues, which people may or may not connect to climate change. But how the government is dealing with is by leaving ordinary people to suffer the consequences rather than dealing with things as a society-wide problem. And we've got the whole question of vulnerable people, where governments refuse to build public housing so that people can have housing to deal with all of these crises. We have a situation where governments are not only enabling fossil fuel companies to keep going, I'll just end on this point, but they're actually actively subsidising these companies. I'll leave it there. Sorry, but that's a lot of character.
Margee Glover from Legalize Cannabis.
My story is probably a bit more positive in a space that's quite negative at the moment. I just want to thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Margee Glover and I'm a long-term resident of Coburg. I'm a medical cannabis patient and a candidate for the Legalize Party's Cannabis Party of Wills. Our Senate candidate Fiona Patton, previously for the recent party, says her apologies for not being here tonight due to a clashing commitment. Today I want to talk about hemp. Hemp is one of the fastest growing plants, requiring minimal water, absorbing large amounts of carbon dioxide. Its seeds and biomass can be converted into biofuel and ethanol, providing a renewable alternative to petrol and diesel. This remarkable plant offers a sustainable energy solution that's practical, scalable and perfectly aligned to our core values at our party of sustainability, economic growth and energy independence. So how can hemp be helpful? Firstly, it's a renewable energy solution. A future energy must be clean, sustainable and independent of fossil fuels. By prioritising hemp biofuel, we can secure our needs while preserving our existing diesel infrastructure, reducing emissions and collaborating globally on this promising technology. Unlike other biofuels that contribute to deforestation in excess of 40 years, hemp provides a truly sustainable option. Supporting hemp biofuel means sustainable and locally controlled energy production, sources for farmers and rural economies, energy independence without corporate exploitation, and a viable alternative to fossil fuels without environmental harm. So, the role of hemp in sustainable construction. But hemp is more than a fuel source. It's also revolutionising the building industry. Hempcrete and hemp insulation present a new opportunity to address several pressing challenges, including rising construction costs, cost of living pressures and increasing risk of bushfires. Hempcrete is fire resistant, non-toxic and We can advocate a policy message that promotes widespread adaptation across Australia. So briefly, in just finishing, hemp is a game changer in sustainability. By investing in its development, we can create a clean and green future while boosting our economy, reducing emissions, and preserving our existing diesel-powered infrastructure. To achieve this, we need a strategic investment in hemp biofuel research and processing facilities, a regulatory reform, international cooperation to align with global hemp innovators. By prioritising this stable alternative, we take control of our energy and construction future and set example across the rest of the world. It's time to lead the change in hemp innovation, because the best path forward is always one that's sustainable, practical and beneficial to us all. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Margee, for that. And don't forget that if you have questions, please use the QR code and write them up. Owen, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Good day, everyone. I'm Owen from the Fusion Party. I know what you're thinking. Where can I get one of these flyers? You're right over there. So don't forget. Anyway, I'm excited to be here tonight. In front of people who care about whose ideas are best, not just who's most popular for the next election. So in terms of saving climate and nature, so Fusion regards that climate change is an emergency, that we need to act right now. We're already at 1.6 degrees of warming, and so when we hear slogans like no more coal, no more gas, that's not enough. Rooftop solar, that's not enough. We need to decarbonise on an industrial scale. So thinking about Fusion's top 3 ways that we're going to do it, priority number 1, so massively increase the funding for the research and development into climate action. So Fusion's a founding signatory of the Climate Rescue Accord, where we're committing to not just reducing emissions, but removing the emissions already in our atmosphere. Even if we were to stop emitting today, these emissions have heating locked in for years to come. So when we talk about massively increasing research and development, precision fermentation, that's a good contender. So if you think of yeast cells or similar organisms, growing proteins, growing food in a lab or a factory, some people may unfairly say that it's lab-grown meat. It's factory-grown meat, meeting the same food standards as anything else. But it's a significant reduction in energy, water, especially land. So estimates are that if we were to grow food to feed all the humans in the world, it would only take an area the size of the ACT. So another research and development breakthrough, so Quaise Energy, they're currently finishing off their pilot plant. It's going to be finished next year. They're using radio waves to melt rock, drilling into 2 to 12 kilometres down where the super hot rock is. So every city in the world could have geothermal energy. This will be a complete game changer. So we need to make sure we're not missing out on these opportunities. Also, geoengineering, that's also a contender for our research and development. So anything from painting roofs white all the way up to cloud seeding, space mirrors. This is an emergency. We need to change at an industrial scale. Our second priority relates to the underlying issue driving our environmental destruction, and that's our societal pursuit of GDP maximisation. It's making people unhappy, it's destroying our environment, it's just not serving us. So, if we were to offer people a regular, let's say fortnightly payment at the Henderson poverty line, currently $500 per week, if people knew this was coming in, they would be liberated. They could quit their bullshit, immoral jobs and move on to something that better benefits them, better benefits society. It will also lift millions of people out of poverty. Once people are doing well in their own lives, they have a concern for the rest of the world and for wider society outside their own immediate families. Our third priority relates to our reform in our housing policy. Specifically, we'll be introducing the Livre A. It's hugely popular in France. It's a government bond where we will be investing in clean energy projects, city building, high-speed rail. So in France, it's 80% of people have one of these. If Australians could invest in clean energy, sustainable city building, if they could put their own money in these government bonds, and these projects are going to happen, and there'll be so much political power behind it. So these 3 ideas, the research and development, the universal basic income, the Livre A. Fusion's ideas the impacts they could have are an order of magnitude beyond what any of the other parties are promising. So yeah, friends, neighbours, let's treat climate like the emergency it is.
Perfectly timed there. Which I understand is a skill you need when in Parliament. So our last wonderful speaker, remember to write your questions also online if you have questions. So thank you very much, Samantha Ratnam from the Australian Greens.
It's lovely to see so many of you here tonight in Coburg. I acknowledge for being on the lands of the Wurundjeri people and pay my deep respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty of this land has never been ceded, and the work towards truth, truly, and justice continues. First Nations people have been the exemplars of custodianship. A custodian is one that guards, protects, and maintains, as First Nations have been doing in caring for this country for over 40,000 years. It seems so far away from the relationship to land and resources that we see in the modern world today. I come from the social justice world, a social worker for over 15 years before entering politics, passionate about empowering people and eliminating inequality. But it was climate change that really made me politically active. Around 2008, I had hope and promise the right government offered us that it would take climate action seriously. But I, like so many people, were left deeply disillusioned when those plans were shelved. Instead, I saw people like Bob Brown and Christine Wills across our screens speaking with courage and vision about needing to protect our planet, and I joined the Greens because I knew nothing else matters if we don't have a planet that we can survive on. This disappointment that I felt in Labor then has only continued to this day. Both Labor and the Liberals back more coal and gas. Since coming to power, Labor has approved over 32 new coal and gas projects. They both support native forest logging. Labor capitulated to the gas industry in abandoning its already weak performance to nature laws. Australia is on track for nearly 3 degrees of warming. All the while, Labor and the Liberals take millions of dollars in donations from the coal and gas industry and political donations. Coal and gas corporations make billions in profit. More than half of all coal and gas corporations pay no tax in this country. Australia is now the world's second biggest exporter of fossil fuel pollution. Maybe that's why the Labor candidate isn't here tonight. This election in Wills is a historic moment for us. Experts are anticipating the most likely outcome of this election is a minority Labor government, and Wills has a crucial role to play in that. In the next Parliament, our top 3 priorities will be no more coal and gas. We just have to stop approving new coal and gas projects if we are to take the climate crisis seriously. We want environment laws that work to protect the environment, including stopping native forest logging, not like now where our environment laws operate to facilitate its destruction. We want publicly owned renewable energy, generation, transmission and storage, cheaper energy and jobs. And we want to see the ends of the billions of dollars in handouts to coal, gas and oil companies. Here in Wills, the contest is between Labor and the Greens. The Liberals can't win. You don't need to fear your vote could help elect a government. Your choice here is between the status quo of Labor approving more coal and gas projects and continuing to destroy our native forests, or someone who will fight for no more coal and gas and effective laws to protect and restore nature. Last time the Greens were in shared power, Australia passed our most effective climate laws, world-leading laws, which actually saw emissions go down. We can do it again with more Greens in Parliament. This is our moment. This is our moment for the environment. This is our moment to address the climate crisis. Let's take it and let's do it together.
And a couple of didn't turn up. We are now time for questions. There's rules around these as well. I'm going to feel great at myself, so I feel very organised tonight. But there's a minute to respond to the questions. A little bit of respect for the debate would also be really great. There's a mic between two of you, if you could just swap and share, that'd be great. And I think the ding-ding is going to 45 seconds. So there you go. And actually, so far, none of the questions are to a particular candidate, so folks will all want to answer. So the first one is, and by the way, some of these have been submitted online and before the night. First one, preamble, is the impacts of a heating planet are manifesting themselves at the regional, national and local level, much of which we've talked about tonight. Regionally, our Pacific Island neighbours are affected by rising sea levels. Nationally, Australia sees through bushfires and floods. And locally, many of our community are being affected by bushfire smoke, extreme heat and storms. The question is, what local climate impacts concern you the most? And what are the priority actions you will take to address them if elected? I think everyone might want to have a say on this one. So,
yes, I guess the main things, there are 7 tipping points that are likely to happen this century, but I guess, these are sort of globe scale. In terms of local scale though, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the small water cycle. So the notion is, if you have more trees in your neighbourhood, when it's hot, they release water, and that process of transpiration actually, that takes energy that would have otherwise been used up in heating the neighbourhood. So, when you go to new homes where there's no trees, lots of concrete, it's very hot around there. The trees, they make it a much more pleasant, cooler place to live. They undermine solar panels on roofs, unfortunately, but I guess you can't have your cake and eat it too.
you just have to put solar panels in the right places and then we'll be fine. What you will do if you're elected.
It's a good question, and it's a big question, so it's kind of an abridged answer. But the question actually spoke to some of the things we have to really consider. The impacts on the planet, so that's our biodiversity and that's our atmosphere and our climate, and we're seeing the impacts of that with more frequent and severe disasters. And we've got to think about the impacts on people. As it was mentioned in the question, we are on the precipice of seeing our first climate refugees from our Pacific Island neighbours. We don't see the media or our politicians in Canberra talk enough about preparing for this moment, a moment that we've contributed to by opening up new coal and gas mines in the middle of a climate crisis. So we have to basically do everything, starting with no more coal and gas and the rapid transition to renewables. One of the things we could do at a local level is that transition to electrification, so getting people off coal, off gas in their homes, for example. We've got to think about things like urban forest strategies to think about cooling effects and urban heat island effects. We've got to think about our urban creeks and waterways because we know our biodiversity and our natural environment are interdependent with what's happening with the climate crisis. So all of the above, particularly those.
Thinking very local of Melbourne in particular, often people in Melbourne think about climate when it's hot. And we've been a bit protected in Melbourne in recent times. The heat's often been in other parts of Australia. But when it's extreme heat, even if you can afford an air conditioner, there's no guarantee it's going to work in extreme heat. And there's been not only a lack of action to stop climate change in terms of stopping coal and gas projects, there's also been a lack of attention to looking after people in extreme heat. And I remember in 2014 when people moved into hotels because their houses or flats were too hot for those who had the money. And so there's a need for governments to actually open up heat relief centres. And there's many more things I could say.
I think locally, I probably think about the latest energy bill I got. I probably think about the increased insurance I'll be paying. I mean, if I'm looking at my own sort of situation and house in this area, we won't be immune from those things. But when I think where the solutions come from, and given that Wills is a federal seat, I think some of those solutions come from federal change. And I think there's some great stuff that does happen in Merribeck, in the local council area, in the local area, and more could happen. So, getting back to my grand solution of hemp, there are several things that block the hemp industry from being the most successful sustainable industry in Australia. So it would be a focus and an expertise that we had to make those changes federally.
Thank you so much. Our first question, we have, there's a couple of popular ones here, but I'm just going to ask another one because I think it's related to what we were just talking about before going on to the popular and second most popular questions. What will they be? This one is, many people in our community are struggling with the increased cost of living. Rooftop solar batteries and energy efficiency upgrades can slash power bills for households. What's your plan to make sure renters and low-income households can participate in the shift to renewable energy and its benefits?
This is an excellent question, and something the Greens have been very vocal about, especially for the last few years, as we have taken up the fight for renters, both in being able to afford a rental, find a rental, but then having a rental that's affordable and sustainable to be able to live in, and that's environmentally sustainable. We need to start thinking about minimum standards that actually consider climate change as a real threat to the habitability of so many homes. Minimum heating and cooling, minimum insulation standards are the basics that we can do to ensure that landlords are protecting their tenants for the future. And there are so many things that we don't have in rentals currently that we can achieve through minimum standards. We should be thinking about minimum standards for new home builds, so that all new homes have minimum standards, no gas in those new homes, and have those installation, have access to solar. We should be thinking about community-generated solar and other renewable energy forms, and we put that in the last few state elections. We put forward proposals where, for example, community renters can access renewable energy at low cost.
So yeah, if you'd like to check out Fusion's housing plan, you'll see, I'm proud of how I think it does a good job of separating the two concerns. You know, is housing a home or is it an investment? And so our policy aims to separate those. And so, you know, obviously the place to live becomes more affordable. The other thing, the question asked about how can we help the rollout of power prices and sustainable energy. Some parties have proposed, giving subsidies for rooftop solar, for instance. We have deserts. They're a great place to put solar panels. Putting them in leafy suburbs is just not going to get the same bang for your buck. It's government spending that's either a subsidy or it's paying for these power plants. Like, we would get the most bang for our buck if we put it out there and give savings to people through the universal basic income, for instance. Lift everybody out of poverty. Make sure all adult Australians go to the end of the poverty line.
Firstly, a lot of public housing actually is better insulated than a lot of private housing, especially apartments and so forth. Not all, but a lot. And I actually think like a large-scale public housing campaign to construct public housing actually would help in terms of proper standards for housing and actually bring down the cost of housing. But the other thing is we need to get rid of the energy market. We actually need genuine publicly owned energy because actually the way the energy market works, it increases the cost often of energy, of renewable energy. And we, through public ownership, bring down the cost of people's power bills.
Okay, I just want to talk about the intersection between hemp and living standards and cost of living relief. So hemp and hemp insulation are cost effective in the long term. They have superior thermal performance, reducing energy bills for heating and cooling. The materials provide affordable, sustainable housing solution by integrating local grown hemp products by Australian farmers, lowering transportation costs. It's fire resistant. Hemp-based materials are carbon negative, actively absorbing CO2. They reduce reliance on hard emission construction materials such as concrete and fiberglass. Hemp is a renewable crop that maintains minimal water. And hempcrete and hemp insulation are non-toxic and free from synthetic chemicals and contribute to a healthier indoor air quality. And they regulate humidity, preventing mold growth and creating comfortable living environments. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Got some more questions coming in, which is very exciting. The most popular question of the night so far is a lovely one, actually, from a teacher here tonight working in a working class school, asking how do I get my students and their parents to be active on climate change when they're struggling to pay the rent and pay bills. Very human question.
I think firstly we actually need to start to rebuild the climate movement that's on the streets. I think one of the reasons why there's maybe a bit less consciousness about climate is because the movement has gone off the streets. And when the argument is just in the prism purely of science and so forth, rather than focusing on corporate greed, I think it's harder for some people to take on board all of the arguments. It sort of becomes an argument between the experts rather than ordinary people. Plus the way the government's trying to market things is that the marketplace will solve the question of renewable energy because there are all these private companies around. But the thing is, that's making the shift to renewable energy happen at snail's pace. So I think we've got to basically go back on the streets and go to working class areas and actually have meetings and discussions and start to get back to on the streets mobilisations.
That's an excellent question and one that we have to grapple with. We've been doing a lot of door knocking in this campaign and spoken to thousands of people, and I can tell you cost of living is coming up as the number one issue that's concerning people, but not the only issue. People also talk to us about caring deeply about the environment and the climate and what's going to happen to the lives of their young people and what kind of earth they're going to inherit. So I think we can do both, and we know that both are very interrelated. We know we need to protect our climate and our environment from runaway climate change. We also need to protect people who are dealing with exorbitant rents because unlimited rent increases are still legal. If you think about what adds to the cost of housing, we've spoken to a lot of renters who tell us their heating and cooling bills are exorbitant because there isn't enough insulation in their buildings. They don't have access to renewable energy because they're a renter and they feel really disempowered from being able to access sustainable and affordable energy choices. So we talk to them about how we want to lift those minimum rental standards, how we want to get better heating and cooling so their power bills are lower, so that they can care both about the environment and climate, and that we are caring about their cost of living and giving them real cost of living relief. So I think we have to talk about all of it because we know it is very, very related to each other.
Yeah, so on this, I guess if we summarise the question as, how can I care about climate when, there are more urgent concerns, cost of living. I would say this is a useful position for the ruling class, for people to be in. All throughout history, the way that, exploitative governments remain in control is that there's always some sort of more pressing issue that people have in minds, that people fighting for something bigger than the immediate day-to-day concerns. And so here, we have a planet to save. And, if people only focus on cost of living, then, a band-aid solution is, for instance, when Labor gave people fossil fuel subsidies. Of course, they called it energy bill relief. If they keep getting away with these band-aids, if people aren't able to see the forest for the trees, then this is why Liberal and Labor have always been in power in some form, ever since the foundation of Australia.
I actually think there's a lesson to be learned as issues and sustainability issues. Thank you. I certainly know in our household, recycling saves us money, taking the bottles down to the bottle depot, just having solar panels on our house. So if I was aiming to teach children about cost savings, I don't think that you can have that without having a discussion about sustainability and about the environment and about the costs it's going to have not to deal with the issues of the environment, which would be increased insurance, increased flooding, huge mobilisation for people out of certain areas.
Lots of questions here. The next one is about nature, and the question is, what will you do to restore what has already been damaged to help threatened plants and animals recover?
So firstly, we have to start with ending native forest logging right across this country urgently. We've done in Victoria and Victoria doesn't continue. But we know it doesn't end there. We have to invest in restoring what we've lost and what we've destroyed. There is a lot of work and there is a lot of economic prosperity too in the restoration work of our environment that comes next. So let's get on with doing that end to native forest logging and we can get on with protecting our precious places. We know, for example, ecotourism offers incredible opportunity to transition our economy from extractive polluting industries to nature restoring and supporting industries. We need to make sure our workforce transitions from those extractive industries into the nature restoring industry. That's why the Greens recently announced our policy to end native forest logging, including a $500 million package for the states and territories to invest in transitioning the workforce and investing back into restoring nature. We've got to create those big national parks that will protect nature for decades to come, which is what we know is also important in addressing the climate crisis.
As well as Socialist Alliance is very committed to ending native forest logging, but we also have to work on other things of creating biodiversity corridors in other ways, including in our urban environments. So we sort of need to look at the environment in different areas. Native forest is very important, and we also need to make sure that workers' jobs are guaranteed in alternative parts of the timber industry, like as in plantation timber, etc. Not all of the workers are going to go into tourism, but there are going to be other things that we have to do in terms of protecting the biodiversity, and part of that includes really learning in terms of First Nations forms of fire management, which doesn't always work in the face of extreme heat and extreme bushfires, but it's a different means of managing the environment and can actually make it easier to deal with the intense bushfires, and that's a really important thing, which also helps with saving that biodiversity.
I think it was mentioned before, perhaps Sam mentioned it very early on, but I think one of the biggest problems is the legislation between the federal and state governments and how local communities can't advocate for their bushland and their reserves because, we had a situation where our family owns a couple of beach houses in a very special spot down in New South Wales, and the bushfires went through there, and we were lucky to retain the houses, but the vegetation, the lyrebirds, kangaroos have been decimated in that area. But what was even more brutally devastating was to find out that the one area that had survived there was sitting on what I think they call dead DAs, where a builder goes in and puts in an application plan under the New South Wales government and gets approval and then sits on it for 10, 20 years. And suddenly this beautiful big bush that you become part of your community, you can't do a thing about. And the federal director can't overturn it, then the minister can't overturn it, and then they throw it back to New South Wales and they throw it back federally. So I just think that bit of legislation is really important to get over.
In terms of restoring nature, I guess, why stop at a few forests that have been cut down in, say, the last 100 years? Why not aim bigger? I was mentioning before about precision fermentation, how we could feed all the humans in the world using the area the size of ACT. So if the Fusion Party was indeed, the Australian government, it's a bit presumptive, if the Australian government was to fund research and development into precision fermentation, then that's a lot less land use needed in Australia. So why would people keep cutting down forests in Australia? They would be fleeing the farms because they would no longer be economically viable. Of course, there would be the universal basic income to protect them. But we're talking about massive amounts of land available again. And we could restore the small water cycle, as I mentioned there, rewilding Australia. Something like 90% of our wetlands have been removed, so these could be restored. Ladies and gentlemen, this is orders of magnitude larger than what you thought was possible.
So the most popular question is a very important one. It's from Isadora from the AYCC, which is the incredibly wonderful Australian Youth Climate Coalition. And the question is, what is your party's stance on nuclear energy?
Totally opposed to nuclear energy, and in fact we've campaigned, social science has campaigned against nuclear energy for a long time, and not only against nuclear energy but also against uranium mining, because uranium mining creates radioactive waste. There's no safe means of storing radioactive waste. That's something which the media has not touched in the recent nuclear debates. So it's like, why would you use a technology where there's no safe means of storing the radioactive waste? And even a lot of the miners, uranium miners who work the uranium mines, died of cancer in Queensland, like the old uranium miners. So, this is very dangerous, and you can't stop, for miners, you can't stop the radon particles getting inside the air-conditioned cabs of mining vehicles. You can't protect the workers. So it's like, why would you engage in something that's like asbestos, but even worse?
The Greens say no nuclear. It's too expensive, it's too risky, it's not viable, and it is a fantasy. I think it's really important that we're all empowered with the information to have some of these conversations in the community. As I mentioned, we've been talking to thousands of people throughout the course, especially over the last few months of this campaign, and it is coming up. And we know it is a red herring that Conservatives are using to keep coal and gas and the fossil fuels industry alive. We know it's the back door to allowing the fossil fuel industry, which is dying too slow a death, but it is dying a death, because we know we need to transition to renewables. We know we've got to end new coal and gas if we're going to have any chance of stopping runaway climate change. But this is the Conservatives' way of keeping the door open to the fossil fuel industry. The more we are armed with information to retort those arguments out in the community, the better off we're going to be in putting this bad idea to bed. I probably don't have enough time, but I was in Victorian Parliament for a number of years. We did a nuclear inquiry just a few years ago, and once again we found, like every other inquiry that's been done across this country over the last decade, that it's absolutely not viable, and the evidence is in, the experts have spoken. Now, if we can all speak with our community to say it's not viable, it's just a fantasy, maybe we can knock it off before it gets any more legs.
So it's worth noting that one of the founding branches of the Fusion Party was the Science Party. Many of the people in Fusion have a background in science and engineering. I studied robotics and software myself. In Fusion, I said that climate change is an emergency. So if we're talking something that needs to be done within 10 years, then yes, I agree. Like, let's not look at nuclear because what makes Australia think we can build it quickly? When, I think China is building it 8 years is their current fastest after many iterations. However, I should note as well, it's been admitted that the uranium fusion plants that we all know and apparently don't love, the ones that have been built since the 50s, it's been admitted that they were a cover for the nuclear weapons program. But nuclear is not just fission, it's also fusion, which would be a game changer. And there's also not just uranium, but also thorium, which is not as sort of deadly, much more plentiful. So to come into a scientific debate and treat it with sort of religious arguments, I find it to be massively distracting. Currently the debate in this country seems to be renewables versus nuclear. I mentioned before that our plans within fusion, geoengineering, that's the debate we should be having. Should we be saying no more coal and gas, or should we be saying let's take carbon out of the atmosphere as well?
Got it right? No?
Yes,
I'm learning. She's on mute. My response to that question would be a big fat no. We would follow all advice, and currently I side with the head of the CSI row rather than the Liberal ministers who seem to get their science degrees from the back of the Kellogg's cereal packet. I'm highly suspicious of, I think she's nailed their strategy on that, but I keep in faith believing them, but even in that, I just go, none of this policy from the Liberal Party about nuclear makes any sense whatsoever. And it's not supported by any of the experts.
So we are pretty much at the end of question time, and there are a couple more questions in there. I was nearly going to push it, but the last one is a very big one. I'm not sure when it would allow it to happen. But it's now time for everyone to be able to sum up, and there's 1 minute to do that and a 45-second warning. Sorry about the rules. And we've asked our wonderful candidates to sum up and consider answering the following question: how will you stay connected with and engage with the people of Wills on climate issues and concerns? And the order is the opposite to what we did last time. So Samantha, you will be first, followed by Owen, Margee, and then Sue.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thanks again, everyone, for coming out here tonight and for the deep commitment and care that I know is represented in this room about our climate and the future of our planet. We have some of the foremost leaders of our climate and environment movement within our Wills community, and for them, we are fighting really hard to change this seat and turn Greens for the very first time. It is fundamental to me, it is fundamental to the Greens that we listen to our community and that our elected representatives reflect the values, the wishes and the visions of their community. I commit to you that I will listen deeply and will be open to every form of feedback and dialogue that's possible. I think we're on the precipice of something really incredible in this country. I think we're on the precipice of changing how politics can work in this country, and that has to start with listening deeply. There are so many people telling us that they feel hopeless and they feel like disengaging from the system. But in this election, in this electorate, we can prove something different. That is, that we can listen to the community, we can take our voices up to Canberra and make sure that every politician in the room hears that the Wills community cares about our environment, cares about the climate crisis, and they want action urgently. That is my commitment to you. I'll take good and bad feedback on at every opportunity, and I hope that I get to represent your voices in Canberra in just a short few weeks' time. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, for coming. In terms of how I listen to people, how receptive I'll be, I guess many of you have emailed me your thoughts about especially climate and environment. I'm always I hope it's quick response. I mean, it's normally within an hour, so I give up my number as well if you want to reach me. Yeah, I'm a very approachable person. I used to work in hospitality. I enjoy spending time with people. And so yeah, you know, even the harshest critics, who knows, maybe I can see harsher, but so far I've been able to weather it. So yeah, you know, I promise, if elected, as well, I guess, you know, there's always new technology coming out. I like to think of myself as an early adopter. If I'm supposed to install some sort of brain computer interface and listen to people even better, sure, I'll sign up to that.
I'm just going to stand up because I actually normally do a dance class at Shebang on a Tuesday night. So I felt like I was like grooving disco in me standing up there. Look, our party has a history prior to Legalize Cannabis and the recent party of working with crossbenchers to get shit done. And we never stopped that. Fiona Patton, who was in the upper house of this state for 8 years, got a number of reforms done, working with all sides of Parliament. And that would be the message that I would give you, that we don't like the perfect to get away in the way of the good. So a lot of things we don't do are perfect, but they move us progressively forward. And we can see things as Legalised Cannabis that other people can't because we surround ourselves with experts in this area. If anyone else would also like to talk to me about, say, some of the cost savings that we will get through our legalising cannabis reforms, that can also be said to go towards the environment and the cost of living. But tonight I just wanted to focus on hemp, the less controversial of the plants that we represent, and see you at the Hustings.
So in Socialist Alliance, we want to see a change in Wills. We want to get rid of the local member who is an apologist for genocide. We want to get rid of the fossil fuel parties, but we don't want to replace the fossil fuel party with someone right-wing. So we want a candidate to the left of Labor to get elected. But also, even if we get rid of Peter Khalil and replace with a candidate who's more to the left, hopefully me, or someone else who's more to the left. The thing is, politicians have never changed anything. Change comes from the grassroots. And that's what we've got to keep in mind. And even when you think you've won a debate or won a reform, we can see what's happening under Trump. Reforms can be taken away by the Republicans or the Democrats. So we've got to, you know, what I do and what I've done since I've been on council is to be active at the grassroots, because that's really where change comes from. And when I was in council, I won a number of motions as a result of being part of the grassroots movement, even though I was only one person, one vote on council. So we actually, on every social issue that's really important, including climate and nature, we have to be active at the grassroots and not rely on politicians or the experts. We have to rely on ourselves.
the seat of Wills and the other 149 electorates around Australia, so thank you so much. And I know that we didn't get to every question, so I'm sure that, I think there's a cup of tea over there, so might be some cold snacks somewhere, but candidates may be able to stay and answer some of your questions. It was really great to have so many of you here tonight and online. Often I get asked these questions, does anyone really care? Because there's just 100 of us here tonight, or 200 of us here tonight, but you're the leading edge of the people in this seat and in this country that care about a safe climate and a healthy nature. And the others are just busy taking the kids to basketball practice and choir and other things. I don't think they realise there was a choir here. So please don't forget to talk to your friends and family about what you heard tonight, because it's those conversations that we have with each other that are still the most important way that we humans can talk to each other and hopefully convince each other about the things that are important for the people and the places that we love. If you look on your seats, there will be a pledge card and a pen. Jane might be able to hold it up. I don't think I have here. No, not these seats. So I don't think you guys can fill in because it's a pledge card for, 2 candidates. So if you are able and interested in filling that in tonight, 2 things will happen. One, your pledge will be sent to the candidates in Wills. And your pledge would be to help them understand that the people of Wills want nature protection and climate action, and that's what the pledge is about. We are doing this pledge in a number of seats around Australia, but also nationally. And it's really important that our political leaders do hear from Australians about what we expect on climate change and nature protection, because it is an urgent issue, and we are not. Our politicians are not acting anywhere near fast enough. So it's really quite wonderful tonight to hear the commitment and passion to that. The second thing that will happen is that you'll receive a scorecard. It's very exciting, a policy scorecard from ACF a few weeks or days out of the election, whenever that is called, and that will rank the party and candidates' climate and nature policies in Australia. It's probably important to note that a lot of the policies haven't been announced yet. We go through a very rigorous process of collating those and assessing those. And it's something that's helpful just when you're going to the polling booth and with friends and family, just to understand where the parties stand. An organisation like the Australian Conservation Foundation doesn't tell you who to vote for, because we think who you vote for should be aligned with your values and the many things that you care about when you go into the voting booth. We hope that one of those things that you care about is climate action and nature protection, because our lives and the lives of the people that we love really depend on big action right now. So please fill out the pledge card before you go, and grab a yard sign on the way out, or stickers. Look, there you go. Visibility within electorates is such an important message. To show your neighbours and friends, but also the candidates and MPs that are driving around, that this seat cares about climate action and nature protection. So there's 1 of 4 signs, I think. You can help nature, you can stand against nuclear, you can stand against coal or gas, or you can stand for renewables in your pink. Pretty hard choice to make if you stand for all those things. And that is it for tonight. I think we're on time, amazingly enough. So thank you so much for coming, and hang on, un momento, por favor. Thanks to another thanks to, thank you, Jane. When you're the CEO of things, people really organise you, thank God, otherwise we'll be in trouble. So again, once again, we'd like to thank the people, the organisations that have put tonight together, the Climate Action Mirrabag, Neighbours United for Climate Action, Australian Conservation Foundation North by Northwest, which is the local Australian community, ACF community group, Doctors for Environment Australia, Coburg Uniting Church, and Australian Religious Response to Climate Change. Thank you so much to those wonderful groups. Thank you so much, that's lovely. We face big challenges, and sometimes they're scary and it feels like you're pushing on the ocean. I definitely feel like I'm pushing on the ocean right now in my job. But the future isn't set. It might look dark to us, particularly what's going on in the world, but it is not set. And it is going to be, the future is shaped by the people who take action today. That's you. And that's you guys as well. Thank you so much for everyone for coming and deciding that you will take that action and make a better future for this country. And I would like to, speaking of someone who's making a better future for the country, hand over back to Reverend Ron for a few final words before a cup of tea. If he's here.
Be sincere, be brief, and be seated. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Love having